Hello and welcome to Meet the Candidates. I'm here today with Mike Overton, who's running for City Council District 5. And we're going to interview him and find out what he believes in and for Greenville's future. So welcome, Mike.
Thanks you. For coming. I appreciate you having me.
Appreciate you being here. So Mike, tell us a little about yourself and your family.
Well, you obviously know, my name is Michael Overton. I am a lifelong resident of Greenville. Spent 5 years in Washington. That's where my little girls were born, but this is my home. I have a wife of 10 years, this year actually, and my little girls are 5 and 4, 19 months apart. We're very fortunate, our family's here. My dad and my grandfather both grew up here. My wife's parents live here, her brother lives here. So we've got a great support system, and this truly is our home.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So I understand you have a very interesting family history here in Greenville for quite a long time. Tell us a little about your family history.
Well, my grandfather came to Greenville back in around 1940, and it was in the Edenton area. Jobs were very hard to find. You're in the middle of the Depression, and he had an opportunity through a connection to get a job at Carolina Dairies, and came to work there around 1943, 44. He opened up Overton Supermarket, which was originally actually where Mercer Glass is today. Eventually moved down to the Jarvis Street location. Expanded it several times, and he came here with $10 in his pocket, and this is what entrepreneurship is. And from that $10, really made something of himself and was able to be a great contributor to the city, as well as being able to support his family. My father grew up in the grocery business. I think he was around 14 years old when he started working in there, and he ran the meat department for years. Overton's was really well known for their meats. That was what they were definitely best known for. But he also had a love for water skiing, and they spent a lot of time down in Bayview in the Bath area, and he skied and fished and just thoroughly enjoyed the water. So he had this desire to do more than just groceries. And so around 1975, after an attempt at boat racing almost cost him his life.
Wow.
He got hurt in that. He decided to buy water skis. He bought 2, he sold 2. He kept 2 and he sold 2 with $400. He used to go to all the water ski tournaments and would sell them out of the back of his car and eventually put them behind a meat counter. And there was a joke.
That's amazing.
There's been a joke that you could either buy a salmon or a slalom.
Exactly.
But he took that business really from the trunk of his car and eventually made it a $70 million company. We ship packages all over the world, and so that's what I had the opportunity to grow up with, was a grandfather and a father who came from humble means, who took very little and made something out of it. And I can honestly say that the reason I bring it up is that is your best teacher. I mean, I went to East Carolina, I got a degree in business. Had a wonderful opportunity to learn a lot there, but I learned from the womb. This is what I grew up in, this is what I know, and I know how to build things, and I know how to succeed in putting forth a product.
Right. You've told me that your father and your grandfather taught you some interesting lessons about business, and what were they?
Well, faith in God, absolutely. That was the core principle of my entire family. That's definitely a core principle of me and where I believe. Treating the customer right. And in the city government, the citizens are customers.
That's right.
That's what we are. And a lot of times we don't get heard by politicians. So treat your customer right. Have a good product to offer. And again, as a city, we've got to have a product to offer. We want to bring jobs and we want to bring industry to the area. We want this to be a great town for people to want to live in. We've got to have the product there for them to enjoy. And most of all was always having a concerted effort to do the right thing.
Excellent, excellent. So I understand that you were Vice President of Operations at Overtons for quite a long time. Tell us a little about your history working with Overtons.
Well, I started at Overtons from birth.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it works when you're in a family-owned business. And
no breaks.
Yeah, no breaks. Pretty much after, in high school, I would work after school. I worked in the ski house, in the showroom, and worked with shoes, and just met a lot of the people from Greenville during that time. During my time at East Carolina University, I was at the call center quite a bit,
Right.
and then the day after graduation, I did not get a break.
Mm-hmm. Straight to work?
No, straight to break. Yeah, I wore my nice clothes to work one day, and we had hired one of our professors who was very good at distribution.
Right.
And he sent me to the warehouse for what I thought was a day and ended up being 4 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
that was an incredible experience to really get to learn that business from the ground up.
Yeah, it sounds like you worked from the introductory jobs all the way.
We did, and by the end of we started our company in 2003.
Right.
So at the end,
Towards the end, what position were you in?
I was vice president of operations. We ran
that
the
entailed?
day-to-day operations of the company. I was responsible for several departments. We had about 500 employees, about $70 million in sales, so that means around a $70 million budget, which ironically is not far off of what the size of the city is.
Interesting, yeah.
So very familiar with handling many things coming at me at one time.
A lot of moving parts.
Those. Absolutely. And what I learned is you can sometimes get focused on one area, and you forget that it's a big wheel. And if you get so focused on one thing, you're forgetting about the rest of it. And what you learn by working in so many different departments is every part of a business or every part of the city is important to the success of the city, and they all must be supported and they all must be fostered. And I believe that having that attitude is important to the success of the city and in its effort to move forward.
In working with that large organization, what did that teach you about working with other people?
You have no choice. That is something that you learn to do. You've got several departments, you've got 500 people working with you. Your job is to motivate them, to support them, to give them the tools that they need to be successful. And it really is very similar in the public sector. I mean, our job is to make sure we have the right people in the right places at the right time, and to give them the tools that they need to be successful in their respective areas, while the bigger goal or job of the city council is to promote the city and to make it an attractive place by that support, to bring people, to bring industry to the city for people to want to live in.
It makes a lot of sense. Speaking of cities, I understand you lived in Washington for a short amount of time and you're involved in their local government there. Tell us a little about that.
I was. We bought a 100-year-old house in downtown Washington.
Oh, wow.
It used to be a bed and breakfast, and had the opportunity to restore that. I am a licensed general contractor, so I'm familiar with what it takes to build and to rebuild in many cases.
Challenging.
Fell in love with historical properties. We did that property, and I've had a couple of other historic preservations that we worked on. While there, I joined the Washington Historic Preservation Commission, where after about a year, I somehow ended up being chairman and spent 4 years there as chairman, and was really involved in the redevelopment, just being a part of it. I mean,
yeah,
so
Washington's
many people
waterfront
involved
had an exciting redevelopment
got an
there. We used to
incredible
go down there a
waterfront
lot.
Absolutely, great restaurants, incredible waterfront, and they got hit hard by the recession, no doubt. But just a lot of great things that we were able to do and be a part of.
The Historic Preservation Association of Washington was involved in the waterfront?
It is involved in leading in terms of making sure that preservation is done in a good way, in a positive way. You don't. The thing about historic preservation is we all want to see, at least I do, want to see historic buildings preserved. But what you got to be very careful of is there's a balance. You can sometimes, in your efforts to preserve, put the cost of such preservation so out of whack that nothing will ever happen and the building ends up decaying.
Right.
So we work really hard as preservationists to have the balance between the redevelopment and the preservation of it, to make sure that things were done in a smart way and done in a way that would be good for the city for many years.
Right, and not inhibit it.
That's true.
It's wonderful. So my understanding is you're involved in the revitalization of downtown, so you work with the...
Well, I am on the board for Uptown Greenville. Have been on there for a couple of years now, and really have been impressed by what they've been able to do with Uptown, downtown Greenville. Right. I mean, growing up, Evans Street Mall was there. That's what I remember for downtown. Yeah, my grandfather used to work in that area at the stock market. So to see Evans Street opened up, and you question, can this really happen? But to see things start to go on down there, to see businesses and attention going on down there, I mean, I think it's so important for a city to have a strong downtown area, because that is the center city. I mean, that is what people come to, and we've got to have shopping, we've got to have restaurants, we've got to have events for families and for students, because we want it to be safe and attractive for people to enjoy.
Of course, of course. And speaking of uptown or downtown, we've got East Carolina next door. I understand that you went to East Carolina.
I did. I am a huge Pirate fan. I grew up a Pirate fan. Graduated in 1996 with a degree in business through the marketing department, and it was a great experience. But again, for me, my education really came from the opportunities that I had watching my dad and my granddad, and what they learned and what they did right, what they did wrong. Was all of us make mistakes, and all of us succeed in different ways, and you learn from those experiences to try to do a good job yourself, and hopefully pass the same things on to your kids, so they learn from your mistakes, but they also learn from your successes.
Excellent. And speaking of higher learning, I understand that you're now associated with Pitt Community College?
I had an incredible honor recently. I was nominated to be part of the Pitt Community College Board of Trustees, and so to get involved in that community college, which a lot of people don't realize, that is the 7th or 8th largest community college in the state of North Carolina out of 58. We've got over 9,000 students. They've had growth every year for the last several years, where so many community colleges are struggling. So to see what they've been able to do has been an incredible learning experience for me. People understanding what that community college really provides to this community, and allowing people to develop job skills and through continuing education or getting additional degrees. It is a very, very important part of our community, as well as East Carolina and as well as Vidant.
Definitely a part of our fabric.
Absolutely.
And speaking of organizations, again, you were telling me that you're involved in RestoreOne. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, also had the opportunity to join the board for RestoreOne. Mm-hmm. That is an organization set up to fight human trafficking. A lot of people don't realize the issue of human trafficking is not something we really want to discuss as a society. Human trafficking is present. It's present in every city. It's present in every community. It's present in every state. And from what I understand, North Carolina is in the top 7 in the nation. So it's a hard story to hear, but I think what they're trying to do, and through faith, through the support of the community, to build the Anchor House, to provide an opportunity to have an outlet for people who have been victims of sexual exploitation and trafficking to be restored and to put back in the community and healed.
Yeah, that's got to be very heavy. That's really nice what you're doing with them. So you also are involved in Covenant Church, I believe.
Have been a member of Covenant Church. First time I visited there was when it was in the schoolhouse at Wintergreen Elementary School.
Oh, wow. A long time ago.
Yes, very long ago. We visited a couple of times. I've been a member of the church since the first pastor was there, probably 15, 20 years. I'm not even sure anymore, but it's an awesome church, just to be involved in there, and it is really intent on following God and teaching those principles and allowing my kids to go there and learn that. Been a member of the choir for a while, taking kind of a break off because of this campaign, but we've done that and worked in the children's ministries, and have had the opportunity through the church to go on mission trips to the Dominican Republic and really see a different side of human life, and it really teaches you a lot and gives you a lot of respect for what you have. So often we forget to be thankful for what we have, and to see that and to learn from that. A lot of times people say you don't go down there for a few days to help people in other countries. It's more of a learning experience for you, that you go there and it really transforms you and just helps you to be more conscious of what you have and what you may can do to help others.
Yeah, we're definitely very fortunate here in the United States and in Greenville. So, and just to touch on the last, you have so many organizations you're a part of. I understand you're involved with the Realtors Association also?
I am. When we sold the company in 2003, I spent some time in the construction industry and working with a company down in Washington on a development down there.
Moss Landing, I would think.
Moss Landing, yes. Yeah. I was project manager for that. An incredible historic focused development that really fit in well with the downtown area, but just
helped build on
really
the downtown
helped.
history.
Oh yeah, it really did. I mean, it allows so many more people to live in that area, and just brings more traffic and attention to the downtown and enhances the waterfront. And it kind of goes back to the balancing of the development and the green spaces and making sure that it's great for everyone to enjoy. But In 2008, got into the commercial real estate business,
Right.
which really wasn't the best time to get into real estate.
Yeah, it's a
But
great time,
it has been
08.
a ride. I don't know what a great market is, so I learned it the hard way, and teaches you to work hard and really stay focused. And currently, I'm the owner of the Overton Group. I've got a great group of associates working with me, and primarily focused on commercial real estate throughout the eastern part of the state. We have offices here in Greenville and also in one in New Bern.
Excellent. And I think you mentioned something about the Pitt County Committee of 100?
Recently joined Pitt County Committee of
Right.
100, which is a group of gentlemen and ladies that work hard to promote Pitt County, to bring industry to this area, and to hopefully bring jobs to this area.
Great, great. Sounds like you're really promoting Greenville. So tell us a little about your beliefs. What are your beliefs in neighborhoods?
Neighborhoods, well, you don't really have a town without them. So it's important that we have great neighborhoods. They've got to be safe. They've got to be vibrant. You've got to definitely take consideration when you're doing commercial development, especially close to neighborhoods, that you have the respect for the citizens and the residents in that area to make sure they're properly buffered and not harmed. You know, buying a home is probably the biggest investment most people ever make. And it's important that we foster the growth of the value of the properties and don't damage them by our decisions. So you hear a lot of talk about smart growth and smart planning, and that's a really, really broad word. But really what it comes down to is you got to make sure when you make the decisions, your decision is to enhance the quality of life in Greenville for the residents, to create a community where people want to live, where they want to work, where they want to play, and where they want to invest.
Right. And you mentioned safe neighborhoods. What is your belief in with the police department?
I think we hit a home run when we hired Police Chief Aiden,
Certainly.
and I think we've got to be very supportive of him. We've got to give him the tools that he needs to be successful. We've got to change the behavior in our community. A lot of people don't realize that Greenville, I think, ranks in the top 2 or 3 in the nation in fatherless households. There's no doubt that has a direct impact on crime. And so there's behavior patterns that have fostered for years and years and years. And I believe strongly that there is a change that can happen by working with the community and community leaders to redevelop the communities and to teach job skills and to teach them things that they normally would not have the opportunity to learn, to get out of the situation that some people are in, and to improve upon themselves, their quality of life, which in turn improves their life in their communities.
Wow. So, very good. You mentioned you're a strong proponent of business.
I am.
Tell us about the business environment you'd like to see.
Eastern North Carolina, as a general rule, is losing its voice. A lot of people don't realize that, but as population shifts and as Raleigh continues to grow at the rate it's been growing, as Charlotte continues to grow at the rate it's been growing, the political strength goes to those areas and less away from us. So it is very important that Greenville grow. There's no choice. You move forward or you move backwards.
Right.
There's no such thing as standing still. And there's so many communities in Eastern North Carolina that have failed because they did not go forward. And we don't need to be that community. We've got so many incredible things here that we can be proud of, but we've got to continue to push them forward. We need entrepreneurship. And I think it's important that we look inside of ourselves to make sure there are no barriers to entrepreneurship, or our policies, or our regulations. Is our environment in general one that people are willing to take a step of faith to start a business, or are willing to bring a business here because we welcome them and we encourage them and we want them to be successful? I think having the Department of Economic Development was a great move by the city. I think that it is important that we continue to promote that, but we've got to promote our city too. And some people look like, well, why are you promoting a city? Well, you've got to do that. You've got thousands of communities across the country.
Right.
All of us are fighting for jobs. And if we're not there and we're not above the crowd, not in the crowd, but above the crowd to make sure they know we exist, then we can't be successful. And one of the things at one of the speeches I had this week, I talked about is you can beat your chest all you want about, hey, come look at me. But if you don't have the product to show them that says, wow, then you're not going to come here. So we've got to have the product, but we've got to promote our product. I know it sounds a lot like retail. That is my background, but
a lot of consistencies.
It ties in. I mean, we've got to make sure that we have the right product at the right place at the right time, and that people know that we're existent and that they'll come here and look at Greenville as one of the places they want to invest.
Makes a lot of sense. So I understand you're a father of 2 children and you have a wonderful family. Tell us a little about your family and what you'd like to see with our green spaces and parks so that for children. And for adults alike.
It is. It is for everyone. It's for students, it's for kids, it's for adults. We've got to make sure that we do have great parks and great green spaces. And who would not want them? I mean, let's be real. But I can tell you there are parks in Greenville that have the same equipment that they had 40 years ago because I played on them.
Wow.
Now, I speak highly of the manufacturer, but I think if we want to have attractive parks and green spaces, I would rather see us reinvest in our existing parks and green spaces before we continue to build and build and build. Let's make sure the ones that we do have the best equipment, are well lit, are safe. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I took my little girls to a park, and if they wanted to swing, they couldn't swing because the swings had 3 feet of water under them. So we've got to make sure what we have, it kind of goes back, what we have is the right product. We want our families to come here. We've got to have great parks. We've got to have great equipment. They've got to feel safe, not just in the parks, but on the sidewalks. We've got to invest in what we have. We've got to invest in our infrastructure. We've got to make sure our roads are well taken care of. We've got to make sure that we have sidewalks where they're needed. And you don't want people to come into town visiting Greenville and see dirt paths besides all our roadways, or people walking the roads because there's nowhere for them to walk. But you got to be smart about it too. You don't want to put something up that you can't take care of. So I feel very strongly about that if you're going to build it, you say they'll build it, they'll come, true, but when you build it, you got to take care of it. So make sure we have what we need to take care of what we put in place.
And speaking of infrastructure, I heard you making comments earlier about the history of the roads and the quantity of times that they get repaved. So what's your belief in that?
Not being on city council, I don't obviously know as much as those that have spent years on city council, but from what I understand, Greenville over the last several years has been on a 75-year repaving cycle, which is just not acceptable. Also, from what I understand, the state gives us around $3 million a year for maintaining our roads, and we spent only about 10% of that. So we have the money, we've got to invest. We need new roads to be built, but we got to make sure it kind of goes back. You got to take care of the ones you have. We've got to make sure that we're not spending $1 million a mile on a road because we got to repave it because we didn't take care of it, but instead are only spending $100,000 a mile to resurface it in areas that may need addressing.
Makes sense. So you have strong beliefs in accessibility from constituents. If you were to be elected on city council, what would you do to make sure you're accessible, or how do you feel about it?
You've got to be accessible. I think in every election we put politicians in place that we want them to support our beliefs. But when we have a problem, we want them to be able to be gotten up with. And so often you can leave messages and you never hear back from anyone. I'm very fortunate to live in a great district. I'm great to live in a great city, but I'm also fortunate to work in the same district that I live in. So the streets that are in our district are the ones that I'm on quite often for the business that I'm in. So I do feel that I'll be accessible, and being in the business I'm in, you know, I'm around a lot, so I'm able to talk to people.
I understand you work right in your area.
I do, right off Evans Street. Yeah. So I'm in the district, and I think that is part of what allows accessibility to be easier is because I'm there.
Excellent, excellent. Now tell me about your fiscal responsibility of government. What are your beliefs in that?
Well, I think if you want to get into, it's hard to talk about fiscal responsibility when you look in Washington. That should never be an example of where we should be. Greenville, the state requires Greenville to have 8% reserve. And I have heard at times where we have had reserves as high as 18 to 20%. Now, I can't, that's what I've heard. I've heard that from people that would know this. And if I'm a taxpayer and I'm paying money to this city, and I'm finding out that 20% of what we're paying is not being spent. The money's there, but it's not being spent. I would not be happy, especially if the roads that I'm riding on are falling apart, or especially if the parks that I'm taking my kids to aren't usable. We need to be smarter about that. That goes back to reinvesting. If you have a house, you're going to maintain your house. Might be replacing your roof in 10 or 15 years. You're going to be painting it or doing this or that. That's keeping your property up. It's our responsibility to keep our town up.
Certainly.
To making sure that we're putting back into the town, which in turn provides us the opportunity to bring additional jobs to town.
And I believe you said you've worked with budgets quite a lot in your business experiences?
We have. That was the opportunity at Overtons, where our sales would go anywhere from $68 million to $70 million and doing the budgets. And I know what it's like to employ people, to meet payroll, to have that responsibility, not to overspend, because you can't. You stay within your means, but you continually reinvest. You can save your way into a hole, or you can invest your way into a prosperous situation.
So basically you're saying you believe in budgets, but you also believe in investing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Smart investing.
That's right.
Not spending more than you have, but looking for opportunities where they exist to go back and put back into the community to grow our community.
Makes sense. And last, tell us a little about your relationships inside and outside of Greenville and how you would utilize those.
Well, as I stated a few minutes ago, where our city or our area, and when I say our area, I mean all of Eastern North Carolina, is losing its voice because of the political strength moving to Raleigh. Very important. Yes, we promote ourselves. Yes, we beat our chest to say, hey, here's what we have and here's where we are. But you've got to have relationships, and you've got to utilize those relationships in Raleigh and across the state to make sure that you are heard and that you have representatives throughout the state supporting Greenville and its growth and its development, as well as East Carolina, as well as Pitt Community College, and as well as Vidant, because they're such essential parts of our city. But I would hope that we can grow beyond those three major institutions to recruit more industry, more high caliber jobs, and just be a great city where people want to be.
Well, that's great, Mike. I want to thank you for being with us today for Meet the Candidates, and I'd like to give you this opportunity to close and say anything you would like to.
Appreciate that, and I want to thank you for listening. I'm excited about this opportunity, and I appreciate everyone who goes out to vote. This is going to be a good race, and there are a lot of great candidates in this race across all the districts. I would hope that you can give consideration to me. I do have the experience. I've had the opportunity to live in this town my entire life. I understand this town. I understand the opportunities that exist in this town. And I want it to be successful. I want it to be a home for my kids when they grow up to live, to work, and to play. That this will be their home that they choose because of so many exciting things for Greenville and what it offers. So thank you again for having us. Thank you for listening. And please go vote November 5th for Michael Overton, City Council District 5. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.